My sister used my husband's death to scam me, but I brought the truth to court. My name is Madison Taylor. I'm 32, and 3 months ago, I lost my husband Ethan in a car accident that still doesn't feel real. It was one of those freak situations that shouldn't have happened. Rain-slick roads, a semi swerving into the wrong lane, and that was it. Gone. Just like that. I got the call at 2:37 a.m., and I still wake up every night around that time, heart pounding, thinking I heard the phone ring. Ethan and I had been married for 8 years. He wasn't just my husband, he was my anchor. The kind of guy who did the dishes without being asked, who remembered little details like the weird way I like my tea, who once drove 2 hours because I casually mentioned craving a specific pie from this roadside diner we'd passed on a road trip 5 years earlier. I don't know how to describe what it feels like when someone like that disappears. Everything went quiet. Not physically. People kept calling, casseroles showed up at the door, cards stacked up on the kitchen counter, but the inside of me went still, like someone flipped a switch and I just shut down. We didn't have kids, and thank God for that, honestly. I don't know how I could have handled trying to keep another human being afloat when I couldn't even feed myself half the time. I dropped 15 pounds in the first few weeks. Some nights I didn't sleep at all, others I slept so hard I woke up disoriented, thinking Ethan was just in the shower or downstairs making coffee. My sister Amber called once. Once. She said all the right things, how sorry she was, how heartbroken, but she didn't show up. She lives an hour away and still didn't come to the funeral. Said it was too hard. Too hard. Like standing next to my husband's casket was a walk in the park for me. Classic Amber. The golden child. Always was. Always will be. It's wild how grief shifts your whole understanding of family. For most of my life, I felt like the invisible daughter. My parents, Charles and Diane, adored Amber. She was the pretty one, the social butterfly, the honor roll cheerleader who married a guy with a 6-figure salary and popped out 2 picture-perfect kids. Me? I was the quiet one, always into books and plants and things they didn't understand. I went to art school, married Ethan, and lived a low-key, quiet life that didn't make for flashy Christmas letters. But after Ethan died, something changed. My parents started showing up. Not just calling, but actually knocking on my door. My dad brought over one of those ridiculous fruit baskets he used to send clients at Christmas. My mom offered to help clean the house. They started stopping by with groceries or insisting I come over for dinner. At first I thought it was performative grief, people trying to do the good parent thing because death makes everyone feel guilty, but it kept happening. They weren't perfect, but for the first time in years, I felt like they saw me. Not the disappointment. Not the weird one. Just me. The irony is, now that I'm finally financially stable, I'm also completely alone. Ethan had life insurance through work, 2 policies, actually. One was part of his base benefits, and the other was something he added when we refinanced our mortgage. Between that, the equity in the house, and the joint savings we'd built up, I'm in a position where I don't have to worry about money for a while. It should be a relief. It should give me space to breathe. But it doesn't. It just makes everything feel emptier. Like I'd trade it all in a heartbeat just to hear him sing off-key in the shower one more time. People don't talk about the weird logistics of death. The paperwork. The calls. The passwords. I had to stand in line at the DMV with a death certificate just to change the title on Ethan's car, and the woman behind the counter had the audacity to ask, "How are you today?" Like I wasn't holding proof that the love of my life was gone. I wanted to scream. Instead, I said fine, and signed where they told me. The house is too quiet now. I've started leaving the TV on, just to fill the silence. Sometimes I sit on the floor in the closet with one of Ethan's shirts pressed to my face, trying to breathe in whatever faint trace of him is still left. I know it sounds crazy. Maybe it is. But it helps. Grief isn't just crying. It's paperwork. It's the empty side of the bed. It's having to cancel someone's dentist appointment and hearing the receptionist go, "Oh, I'm so sorry." It's realizing no one else knows how to reset the router or which drawer the batteries are in. It's a million tiny moments that used to mean nothing and now mean everything. I'm not okay. I don't know when I will be. But I get out of bed most days. I eat something. I shower. I let my parents come over, even when I don't want company. And I keep Ethan's phone charged, even though there's no reason to. Because for some reason, I can't stand the thought of it going dark. Not yet. Not while I still remember the password. Growing up, I always felt like I was the background noise to Amber's spotlight. My parents weren't cruel in the traditional sense. There were no screaming matches or slammed doors, but the way they overlooked me was its own quiet form of rejection. I was the kid who brought home perfect report cards that got a passing good job, while Amber's participation ribbon in cheer camp got a framed photo and a post on my mom's Facebook page. When I got into NYU's art program with a partial scholarship, my dad barely looked up from his laptop. When Amber got into a state school with average grades and a shopping addiction, my mom threw her a surprise party. It wasn't just favoritism. It was like they genuinely didn't see me. Like I was some well-behaved tenant renting space in their house, while Amber was the adored daughter they actually wanted. It messed with me more than I let on. I stopped trying after a while. I didn't invite them to gallery shows. I didn't tell them when I got promoted or when my work got published in a regional design mag. I let myself fade into the periphery because it was easier than screaming into a void that only echoed back Amber's name. But after Ethan died, everything shifted. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was fear of their own mortality. Maybe they were just lonely. Whatever the reason, my parents started coming around. At first it was just dinner every Sunday. Then it was Thursday lunches, impromptu visits on Saturdays with fresh fruit from the farmer's market, texts from my mom asking if I'd seen the latest episode of some cooking show we used to half-watch during my high school years. My dad started fixing little things around the house again, like he used to when I was little, before he decided I wasn't interesting enough to invest in. He replaced a faulty light switch without me asking and mowed the lawn even though I had a landscaping service. My mom brought over a casserole she used to make when I had a cold in 4th grade. She said she found the recipe while cleaning out a drawer and thought I might like some comfort food. And the weirdest part was, I welcomed it. I leaned into it. I let myself believe that maybe, finally, I had their attention, not in a performative pity way, but in a real, present kind of way. We'd sit on my back porch, sipping coffee and talking about Ethan. Not the big stuff, just the little things. Like how he always overwatered the succulents or how he insisted on eating his toast cold because that's how his mom served it. My dad even told me once, out of nowhere, that he wished he'd gotten to know Ethan better while he was still around. He said he regretted assuming we'd have more time. At some point in those weeks, I started sending them money. It wasn't a grand gesture, not at first. I transferred a few $100s to help with a plumbing repair they mentioned in passing. Then another payment for a new fridge after theirs broke. Then it became routine, $1,800 a month, every month, like clockwork. My mom never asked directly, but she always made sure I knew how tight things were. Retirement was harder than they expected. Dad's pension didn't go as far as they planned. Health insurance didn't cover everything. Amber had her own family to support, and they didn't want to burden her. I told myself I was doing it out of love, out of gratitude for the way they'd been showing up for me. But deep down, I think I was trying to buy permanence. Like if I just kept giving, they'd keep treating me like I mattered. It felt good at first, like I was finally part of something. We'd have dinner together, laugh about some dumb commercial, talk about the neighbor's drama like we were old friends. My dad even started calling me kiddo again, like he did when I was 10 and still believed he was the smartest man in the world. I let myself believe it was real, that I'd somehow earned their love, finally, by being broken enough to make them notice. Amber was still around, of course, but in a more diluted way. She'd drop by with her kids, stay just long enough to take a few selfies for social media, then vanish again. My parents still lit up when she walked into a room, but they started saving some of that light for me too. My mom even apologized one night, kind of. We were drinking wine on the porch, and she said, I know we didn't always get things right with you. We were young and busy and didn't see everything we should have. I'm sorry for that. I nodded, trying to keep the tears from spilling, because hearing her say it out loud felt like being handed something I'd stopped hoping for years ago. I don't know. Maybe grief softened them. Maybe losing Ethan made them realize how little time we really have with the people we love. Or maybe they just needed someone, and I was convenient. I haven't figured that part out yet. But for a while, it felt like things were healing. Like all the cracks from childhood were slowly being filled in with something that looked a lot like care. I kept sending the money. They never brought it up, never thanked me, but they also never said it wasn't necessary. And I didn't mind. It felt like a small price to pay for finally feeling like I belonged in my own family. It had been months since Amber had last shown her face at one of our family dinners, and honestly, I'd started to enjoy the quiet rhythm of her absence. No sharp glances across the table, no backhanded compliments, no forced small talk about her kids or the latest brand deal her husband was working on. Just me, mom, and dad sitting around a modest dinner table, eating pot roast and talking about old recipes and weather patterns like some kind of fragile truce had finally settled in. But the thing about Amber is that she never stays gone for long. And when she comes back, it's never simple. She arrived late, unannounced as usual, waltzing into my parents' kitchen like she'd just stepped out of a magazine shoot, wearing one of those gauzy, flowing maternity dresses that made her look ethereal and impossibly put together, even though she was visibly 7 months pregnant. Her hair was perfect, her makeup subtle but effective, and her belly was the only thing that made it impossible to pretend nothing had changed. The silence when she walked in was sharp enough to cut meat. I was setting the table, my dad was stirring something on the stove, and my mom was halfway through slicing a loaf of sourdough when the front door opened and Amber floated in like she owned the place. No hello, no warning, just that dramatic flair she's always used like a weapon. My mom dropped the knife. Oh my God, Amber, she gasped, hand flying to her chest like she was about to faint. My dad turned and blinked like he'd seen a ghost. Amber just smiled. That smile, the one that always meant she was holding something over all of us, even if she hadn't said it out loud yet. I stood there frozen, a dish towel in my hand, staring at the unmistakable curve of her stomach. She placed a perfectly manicured hand on her hip and said, I figured it was time for a family visit. Hope there's enough food. She slid into a seat like she hadn't disappeared for almost a year. Like she hadn't skipped birthdays and missed Ethan's memorial and ignored our messages for months on end. She didn't explain where she'd been, didn't offer an apology or even a basic update. Just that same self-assured tone, like she was doing us a favor by showing up. Mom fussed over her instantly, fluttering around like a shaken bird, pulling out a chair, offering her juice, asking if she needed to lie down or elevate her feet. Dad, who rarely got emotional about anything, had this stunned look on his face like he couldn't believe his favorite was back under his roof again. I stood there, feeling like a stranger at my own family dinner. The whole meal was surreal. Amber didn't say much at first, just picked at her food and leaned back in her chair like some smug queen surveying her court. Eventually, the questions started. My mom asked about the baby, the due date, if she needed anything. Amber answered vaguely, mid-September, everything's fine. I'm glowing, aren't I? No mention of a partner. No name. No we. Just her. I waited, thinking maybe my parents would ask the obvious question. But they didn't. They tiptoed around it like the name of the father was some sacred landmine. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. So, I said, trying to keep my tone even, is the father going to be involved, or? Amber didn't even blink. She sipped her water and said, that's not something I feel like discussing right now. Just like that. Like I was a nosy stranger, not her sister. I pressed a little, not because I wanted to start a fight, but because it felt insane to sit there pretending this wasn't the giant elephant in the room. You've been gone for months, and now you're 7 months pregnant. You don't think we deserve some sort of explanation? She narrowed her eyes at me, and that smile crept back across her face. I don't owe you anything, Madison. My dad shot me a warning look, the kind that used to shut me up when I was 15 and dared to question why Amber got a new phone while I was still using a beat-up hand-me-down. My mom jumped in with her softest, most condescending voice. Madison, sweetheart, maybe now's not the time. Amber's under a lot of stress. We're just happy she's here and healthy. I stared at them. These were the same people who barely tolerated me crying in their kitchen 6 months ago, who couldn't even look me in the eye when I broke down talking about Ethan's jacket still hanging by the door. And now they were defending Amber like she was made of porcelain. I turned back to her. You expect to just show up pregnant, not say a word about where you've been or who the father is, and act like we're all supposed to throw a party for you. Amber leaned back, one hand resting lightly on her belly, and gave me a look I knew all too well. That smug, knowing smile that always meant she had a secret. One she planned to detonate when it suited her best. I don't expect anything, she said, voice calm and saccharine. But you all seem happy to see me, so I guess that's what matters. I could feel the rage building in my chest, that old, familiar feeling of being the outsider in my own family. The one who always had to explain herself. The one who had to prove her worth while Amber just had to show up. Dinner ended quickly after that. I cleared the plates in silence while my mom rubbed Amber's back and told her how beautiful she looked. My dad disappeared into the living room, probably pretending to read the paper while listening to every word from a safe distance. Amber sat there like a satisfied cat, full and smug and absolutely untouchable. I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying the scene over and over, trying to figure out what she was hiding. I knew that look, that smile. It wasn't just about being pregnant. There was more coming, something she was holding back. And whatever it was, I had a sick feeling it was going to be aimed directly at me. The invitation came in the most Amber way possible, an offhand text with a fake sweet tone layered over something that felt more like a taunt than a gesture of goodwill. Hey, she wrote, having a baby shower next Saturday at Mom and Dad's. Would love for you to come. There's going to be a special moment I think you'll want to be there for. No details, no apology, no explanation of what the hell special moment was supposed to mean. Just that vague little smirk hiding between the words. I stared at the message for a long time, rereading it like there was a hidden message I was supposed to decipher. Part of me wanted to delete it and move on, pretend I'd never seen it. But the other part, the one that still wanted to believe maybe Amber was reaching out, maybe this was her version of a peace offering, couldn't let it go. I told myself it might be her way of softening, trying to include me, trying to fix the rift we both knew was there even if we never said it aloud. The same way I told myself when we were kids that the reason she pushed me out of the spotlight was because she didn't know how to share it, not because she wanted me out of the picture entirely. So I went. Of course I went. I even went above and beyond, like a fool. I ordered this high-end baby monitor with two-way audio and a wide-angle night vision camera. It wasn't cheap, but it felt like something a sister would buy, something thoughtful. I also picked out a hand-knitted baby blanket from this little shop downtown. A soft, beautiful thing in pale sage green, the kind of color that didn't scream boy or girl, just calm and warmth. It reminded me of the quilt Ethan's aunt had made for us when we got married, and I thought maybe, just maybe, Amber would see the meaning in it. The shower was being held at my parents' house, of course. I arrived 15 minutes early, thinking maybe I could help set up or at least avoid making a scene by walking in late. My mom opened the door wearing an apron dusted with flour, already buzzing with hostess energy. "Oh good, you're here," she said, giving me a quick hug before ushering me in. The living room had been transformed into this pastel pink and gold wonderland, streamers draped from the ceiling, little jars of candy lined up on the table, and a stack of presents already threatening to topple over. I tucked mine into the pile and tried not to feel weird about how pristine everything looked, like it had been curated for Instagram. Amber was holding court in the center of it all, glowing like she always did in front of an audience. She saw me and smiled, that same controlled smile I'd seen at dinner, the one that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Madison," she said, with a mock-surprised tone. "You came." "I was invited," I said, keeping my voice light, trying not to sound defensive before anything even started. She leaned in and air-kissed my cheek like some kind of reality TV character. "I'm glad. I really am." The party unfolded in a blur of overly sweet punch, squealing women from Amber's yoga class or book club or whatever trend she'd adopted this year, and a round of baby-themed games that made my skin itch. I played along, because that's what I do. I smiled when I was supposed to, nodded at small talk, laughed when something vaguely funny was said about diaper explosions. All the while I kept wondering what this special moment was supposed to be, and why Amber had hinted at it like it was some big reveal. It came just after the cake. Amber stood up, one hand resting under her stomach like she was posing for a maternity magazine, and clinked her plastic cup with a spoon. "Okay, everyone," she said, her voice rising above the background chatter. "I have a little surprise. Some of you know that I've chosen to raise this baby on my own, and it's been a journey figuring everything out. But today, I want to share something special with all of you. Something personal." The room went still, and my stomach twisted in that way it does when you know something bad is coming but you don't know from which direction. Amber turned toward my parents, who were standing near the fireplace beaming like they were about to watch her win an award, and then she turned her eyes directly on me. "I've been thinking a lot about family," she said slowly, deliberately. "And I realized that even though some people step back during the hard times, others really step up. Some people give, quietly and consistently. They don't ask for anything in return. And that kind of support is what I want my child to grow up seeing." For a second, I thought maybe, this was it. Maybe she was going to thank me. Maybe she was going to acknowledge the money I'd been sending our parents every month, the visits, the support I'd offered even when I wasn't sure it was welcome. But then she reached down, picked up a small white envelope from the table behind her, and handed it to my dad. "That's why I've decided," she continued, "to give Mom and Dad legal guardianship in the event anything ever happens to me. They've been the rock through all of this. They've shown me what family really means." The applause was instant. Clapping, whooping, a couple of women dabbing at their eyes. My mom was crying, clutching the envelope to her chest like it was a gift from heaven. My dad looked like he'd just been handed a Lifetime Achievement Award. And I stood there, frozen, watching it all unfold like a slow-motion wreck. Not a word about me. Not one syllable. The woman who disappeared for most of her pregnancy refused to say who the father was, and reappeared with a smug smile, and a plan now stood there being praised for her wisdom and her strength, while I clutched a $300 baby monitor in a paper bag with a satin ribbon. Amber glanced at me once, just once, and gave me that look again, that tiny tilt of her head, the flicker of a smile that said, "You never stood a chance." I didn't stay for the presents. I didn't say goodbye. I walked out the front door into the sunlight, blinking back the heat in my face that had nothing to do with the temperature. I sat in my car for 10 minutes before I started the engine, just sitting there, holding the steering wheel, realizing the whole thing had been a setup, not a celebration, not a gesture of inclusion, a spectacle, a performance, a warning shot. And I got the message, loud and clear. I was already halfway to the door when she called for everyone's attention again. I should have just kept walking. I should have pushed through the crowd, climbed into my car, and driven until the GPS lost signal. But I didn't. I stopped. I turned. Maybe it was reflex, maybe some stubborn part of me still believed in closure, but I stood there, gift still dangling from my hand, and watched as Amber walked back into the center of the room, her hands folded calmly across her swollen stomach like she wasn't about to detonate something irreversible. I know earlier I said I wasn't ready to talk about the father, she began, her voice smooth and collected, even a little rehearsed. But after everything this family has been through, after all the growth and healing we've done, I think now is the right time. She looked around the room, making eye contact with people like she was giving a graduation speech. There was a pause, just long enough for the tension to twist in my chest. And then she smiled again, that slow, satisfied smile that only ever came right before she dropped the knife. The father of my baby, she said, is Ethan, Madison's late husband. For a moment, no one said anything. It was like the whole room forgot how to breathe. I felt the floor dip under me, like the air got sucked out of the house, and I had to actually steady myself on the edge of a chair to keep from falling. I must have misheard her. I had to have. But she just stood there, proud and polished and glowing with that sick kind of self-righteousness only Amber could wear like a crown. My heart was pounding so loudly I couldn't hear anything else for a second. Then came the murmurs, the gasps. Someone actually said, "Oh my God," and another woman covered her mouth like this was some kind of daytime soap reveal. And Amber, as if she hadn't already destroyed the very concept of reality, kept going. She pulled out her phone, because of course she had proof, and started scrolling through what I can only describe as a grotesque little photo gallery. A picture of her and Ethan at a hotel bar. Another of them sitting on a balcony with drinks in their hands. Then one in a dimly lit room, blurry but unmistakably intimate. It wasn't just the photos. She had screenshots, messages, a string of texts from Ethan. And there it was, in cold black font on a bright screen. I can't do this much longer. I'm going to leave her. I promise. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. I was frozen in the middle of the room, every cell in my body trying to process what I was seeing, what I was hearing. The man who kissed my forehead every morning, who made me breakfast on Sundays, who held me when I cried and swore we'd grow old together. He was planning to leave me. For my sister, I felt something shift inside me, something cold and heavy settling into my chest like wet concrete. My ears were ringing, but through the noise, I caught her voice again, clear and smug. "We never meant for it to happen," she said, almost sweetly. But feelings grew. And Ethan, he wanted a family. He just didn't know how to tell you. She said it like she was the one offering comfort. Like she was doing me a kindness by revealing the worst thing I'd ever heard in front of a room full of acquaintances and pastel balloons. I looked at my parents then, desperate for something. Denial, outrage, even just confusion. But they didn't look shocked. They didn't even look uncomfortable. My mom had her lips pressed together in that way she does when she's holding back a self-satisfied smile. My dad was nodding slowly, like this made perfect sense. "You knew," I said, my voice flat, barely a whisper. "You already knew." My mom reached out like she wanted to take my hand, like this was some difficult but necessary family milestone. "Honey," she said gently, "we didn't want to hurt you." "You didn't want to hurt me?" I said louder now. My legs were shaking. My hands were shaking. "You knew she slept with my husband, and you invited me to a baby shower? You let me stand here and celebrate this." "It's complicated," my dad said, his voice maddeningly calm. "Things aren't always black and white." Amber was watching me with that same infuriating expression, like she'd finally won a game she'd been playing since we were kids. Like this was what she'd been building toward all along. Not just to take what I had, but to make me watch her do it. Publicly. With a ribbon on top. I turned and walked out. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I made it to my car and slammed the door, sitting there in stunned silence while people inside clapped for her. Clapped. For the woman who'd slept with my husband while he was alive and humiliated me while he was dead. There's no language for that kind of betrayal. No neat little word that wraps it up. It's not just hurt. It's obliteration. A before and after moment where everything you thought you knew turns to ash in your hands. And I was the only one who didn't see it coming. I didn't answer a single message. Not the text from Amber. Not the voicemails from my mother pretending to understand this is hard. Not even the email from my dad asking if I'd had time to calm down. I blocked all of them. Changed my number. Shut down the joint family account I'd been sending money into each month without fail. $1,800, like clockwork, for nearly a year. Gone just like that. The silence on their end after I cut them off said more than any apology would have. No begging. No questions. Just a few passive-aggressive emails from my mother about how things are harder now than I realize. That was it. No admission. No guilt. Just silence wrapped in entitlement. I spent 2 weeks in that strange, heavy fog where time folds in on itself. I didn't go back to my parents' house. I didn't leave my own unless I had to. I kept the shades drawn. I deleted all the photos of Ethan from my phone, then pulled them back from the trash folder the next morning like some masochistic reflex. Grief and betrayal wrapped around each other until I couldn't separate them. I cried until my eyes burned, then stared blankly at the wall while the hours disappeared. The part of me that used to believe in fairness, in decency, in some kind of family loyalty, had been hollowed out and scraped clean. There was nothing left to hold on to. Just paperwork. Just ashes. Then the letter came. It wasn't handwritten. It was formal, couriered, folded with surgical precision and stamped with the name of a law firm in embossed gold. I opened it at the kitchen table, heart already pounding before I'd even read the first line. Amber was suing me. Not for defamation. Not for harassment. But for a portion of Ethan's estate. She was claiming her unborn child, my sister's baby, was Ethan's biological son and therefore entitled to 50% of Ethan's assets, including our house, our joint savings, and the life insurance policy that had been paying my bills since his death. I had to read the letter twice to absorb it. I held the paper in my hands, rereading her attorney's words, each line colder than the last. She wasn't just staking a claim. She was carving up what little remained of the life I had left and calling it justice. There were attachments, screenshots, a notarized copy of some journal entry where Ethan had allegedly written about leaving me, photos of her and Ethan at hotels with dates, timestamps, all perfectly aligned to the weeks before he died. Text messages, a vague mention of a paternity test she planned to submit once the baby was born. The entire thing read like a script. Polished, brutal, calculated. I didn't respond. Not directly. Instead, I did the only thing I could think to do. I found an attorney. His name was Richard Martinez. A friend of a friend gave me his number and said he was aggressive, discreet, and smart enough to know when something looked bad on paper. I met him in a small office downtown with a view of the courthouse and a plaque on his desk that simply read, "No free advice." He listened quietly as I told him everything. Not just the legal stuff, but the backstory. Amber, the dinner, the baby shower, the announcement, the photos. He didn't interrupt. Just scribbled notes on a yellow legal pad, one eyebrow raised, the occasional frown deepening across his forehead. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and let out a slow breath. Then he looked at me with a bluntness that knocked the air out of my lungs. "You need to understand something," he said. "From a legal standpoint, Amber's case isn't weak." I stared at him. "You're saying she might win?" "I'm saying," he said carefully, "that she has more than enough to file a legitimate claim. And courts don't work on emotion. They work on documentation, precedent, and perception. The photos, the messages, the suggestion that Ethan intended to leave you. It won't matter how you feel about it. If her kid is his biological child, that child could have a legal right to inherit. It doesn't mean she gets the money directly, but it does mean your situation just got a whole lot more complicated." I felt like the floor dropped beneath me. Again, "She's doing this for the money," I said. "Not the baby. Not because she loved him. This is revenge. This is what she does." He didn't argue. He just nodded and wrote something else on his pad. Then he looked me dead in the eyes. "And that's what we'll have to prove." The call came on a Tuesday morning, just after I'd managed to eat half a bagel for the first time in days. I didn't recognize the number. Normally, I would have let it go to voicemail like everything else, but something, some gut pull I couldn't explain, made me pick up. The voice on the other end was quiet but firm, and what she said in the first 5 seconds stopped everything around me. "Madison, my name is Evelyn Parker. I'm Ethan's mother." I didn't answer right away. My mind stalled, like someone had yanked the handbrake inside my head. I almost laughed. Ethan's mother? That wasn't possible. Ethan told me, on more than one occasion, that both his parents were dead. He said it casually, like a fact that didn't need to be unpacked. I never pushed. We didn't have the kind of marriage where we dug into every painful corner. I figured he had his reasons. I finally managed to say, "I think you have the wrong person." "No," she replied softly. "I don't. I've waited long enough to call. But with everything happening, I think you need to know the truth. And I have proof." Her voice wasn't dramatic. There was no tremble, no desperation, just this calm conviction that cracked something open in me. She told me she'd seen Amber's public announcement, the social media post, the photos, the story that was quickly growing teeth. A friend of hers had sent it to her, unaware of the context. Evelyn said she recognized my name. She'd kept her distance all these years, but she couldn't stay silent anymore. Not now. I didn't know what to say. She offered to meet. Neutral place. Somewhere public. No lawyers. No media. Just answers. We met at a small cafe near the hospital district. She was already sitting at a corner table when I arrived, a small woman with gray-streaked dark hair, reading glasses perched low on her nose, and a folder tucked under one arm like it hadn't left her side in years. She looked up when I approached and gave me a polite, sad smile, like she knew exactly how broken I was, and maybe had been broken in the same ways once herself. We didn't do small talk. She slid the folder across the table before I even sat down. Inside were copies of medical records, lab reports, test results, dates, diagnoses, a clear, final summary from a urologist dated nearly a decade ago, outlining Ethan's condition in clinical language. Azoospermia, non-obstructive, irreversible. Ethan had been completely infertile since he was 25 years old. No sperm count, no possibility of natural conception. I read the papers twice, my hands trembling so badly I had to press them flat on the table. This wasn't speculation. It wasn't hearsay. It was science. It was fact. There was no way Amber's child could be Ethan's. None. Biologically, medically, physiologically, impossible. I don't understand, I said, my voice thin. Why would he lie? He told me his parents were gone. Evelyn's face didn't change. He was angry. We fought. He cut contact with me after he got the diagnosis. He felt betrayed, like I hadn't protected him from what ran in our family. His father had fertility issues too. Ethan didn't want to talk about it, didn't want to be pitted. He wanted to pretend it never happened. When I found out he got married, I wanted to reach out, but he'd made it clear I wasn't welcome. So I respected that. But now now someone's using his name to get something that doesn't belong to them. I can't let that happen. I sat there in stunned silence, staring at the papers. All this time, all this hell, and the one person who could end it had been living quietly, just a phone call away. She could have stayed gone. She didn't know me anything. And yet here she was, risking more pain, more exposure, just to tell me the truth. I looked up at her. Amber's suing me. She wants half. Says her baby is Ethan's heir. Evelyn nodded. Then it's time to stop letting her control the story. She tapped the folder. Give this to your lawyer. And tell him there's more if he needs it. I took the folder with both hands. For the first time in weeks, my breathing came easier. Not because everything was fixed, but because I finally had something solid to stand on. Something real. Ethan didn't betray me with a child. Amber lied. And now, I had the proof. Court was colder than I expected. Not just the air but the energy, the walls, the way everyone avoided eye contact unless it was absolutely necessary. The fluorescent lights made everything look sterile and surreal, like we were walking through a bad television episode instead of real life. I sat beside Richard, folder in my lap, hands clenched so tightly my knuckles ached. Across the aisle, Amber looked like a woman who still believed she could bluff her way out of anything. She wore a soft pink dress, minimal makeup, and that same little halo of fake innocence she always conjured when she wanted to look harmless. Her lawyer looked nervous. I took comfort in that. When the judge entered and the formalities began, everything started to slow. Richard stood first, introducing the key evidence without any theatrics. Just facts, dates, reports, and Evelyn's name, spoken with clarity and confidence. He presented the folder. The room went quiet as copies of Ethan's medical records were passed forward, reviewed, and marked. Then came Evelyn herself. She stood, calm and steady, and confirmed under oath what Ethan had kept hidden all those years. He had been medically diagnosed with irreversible infertility. The word azoospermia was spoken aloud in that courtroom more than once, and each time, Amber's face changed just slightly. Eyes darting, jaw clenching, that subtle tremor in her hand that gave away the panic behind the polished exterior. Amber's attorney objected, claimed it wasn't relevant, that Ethan's diagnosis didn't rule out possibility. The judge disagreed, ordered a DNA test. Not with Ethan. He was gone, but with Evelyn. A direct maternal comparison to determine whether Amber's baby shared genetic material with the Parker family line. It was the first time I saw Amber falter completely. She tried to protest, but her voice cracked. She looked at her lawyer, then at me, then at Evelyn, who didn't blink. I saw it then, the unraveling, the quiet resignation, the truth circling like a shark, getting closer with every breath. The results came back 1 week later. I wasn't in the room when they read them aloud, but I saw the aftermath. The judge's ruling was swift and final. The child had no genetic connection to Ethan. Zero. No ambiguity. No technicality to cling to. Just the truth, blunt and cold and inescapable. Amber broke down. Not in the dramatic, theatrical way she usually did, but in the exhausted, cornered way of someone who finally ran out of rope. She admitted it. On the record, she didn't know who the father was. She just knew she was alone and scared and wanted a piece of something that felt safe, even if it wasn't hers. Even if it meant lying, manipulating, dragging my name and Ethan's memory through the mud. Her voice barely carried across the room when she said it. I didn't feel sorry for her. I didn't feel anything. Just quiet. The judge dismissed her claim in full. No inheritance. No access. No financial ties. It was over. Outside the courthouse, the sun hit my face for the first time in what felt like months. Richard shook my hand, said we'd done well, that I could finally put this behind me. I nodded. I didn't say much. I was still holding the final paperwork when I saw them, my parents, standing by the steps, waiting like cowards just outside the line of legal obligation. My mother had tears in her eyes. My father looked older, smaller somehow. My mother stepped forward and said my name like it was still hers to say. We didn't know what to believe, she started. I didn't let her finish. I pulled out my phone and blocked her number in front of her. Then I did the same for my father. They stood there, stunned, as if they hadn't played a part in all of it. As if their silence and loyalty to Amber hadn't cut me open. I turned and walked away, the sound of their voices behind me barely registering. Evelyn was waiting by the curb. She wasn't crying. She wasn't smiling either. Just watching me with that same calm presence she'd had from the beginning. I reached into my bag and handed her the keys to Ethan's apartment. He would have wanted you to have this, I said. She held them like something sacred, like they still carried the weight of who he was. She didn't say thank you. She just nodded. That was enough. I don't know what happens next, but I know it won't include any more lies, or people who choose convenience over truth. I know I'm done bending myself to fit into a family that only wanted me when I was useful. I know Ethan wasn't the man I thought he was, but he also wasn't the man they tried to rewrite him into. I know that healing doesn't come in perfect, linear lines. It comes in hard choices and slammed doors and quiet moments where you finally breathe without bracing. And I know this. I'm free.